Hello and welcome to another episode of Metal Effort. My name's Nehemiah and today we're going to be talking about this piece of metal, the Booze Blades Smoke, specifically the carbon fiber version, which was exclusive to Blade HQ. I don't know if they're going to be redoing this one or if it was a sprint run, but right now it's sold out and they haven't said anything about coming out with another batch, but it's very popular, so I wouldn't be surprised if they do. Let's jump into the size comparison. We've got our Spyderco PM2, we've got our Spyderco Para 3. This is a perfectly medium-sized knife. The blade length is 3.5 inches, cutting edge is a little bit less than that. And there's one other knife I want to bring in real quick. So I had Nick's Smoke, which was the titanium version, and then a viewer lent me his whole batch of knives, like 14 knives or something like that, and in that collection was a Booze Blade Smoke. So this review is going to be probably the most well-rounded in terms of the sample size that I had. I got 3 knives all in at the same time to kind of compare against. I gave Nick his blue one back, but still, the action between them are very similar, and just kind of seeing the subtle differences between each particular individual knife and the model itself has been really helpful. So I'll be mostly reviewing this from the perspective of the carbon fiber one, but a lot of that applies to just the traditional titanium version. So keep that in mind. Also, just to note, this carbon fiber one is one I own. I have to sell it, unfortunately. My computer took a dump, and I'm selling a bunch of my favorite knives in order to buy a new computer, which is ironic and makes me frustrated, but got to do what I got to do. I want to keep the channel going. Let's get a quick weigh-in, see we can compare it to the titanium version, but the carbon fiber is clocking in at about 2.4 ounces, which is a solid weight. And then we've got the titanium one, which a little bit heavier than that, but still, even the titanium one is under 3 ounces for a 3.5-inch blade. That's pretty stellar. So this is definitely getting full marks in the weight department on our initial weigh-in here. And just so you can see it compared to an actual ruler, yeah, 3.5-inch to the shoulder, about 3.3-ish cutting blade. It's a good size. With the objective stuff out of the way, let's get into the dent, the decent, the excellent, the nitpicks, and the terrible of this piece of metal. First off, in the decent is the blade shape. This very much kind of reminds me, and a lot of people have mentioned it, of kind of like a steak knife. But, a steak knife shape is actually a pretty useful one. Lots of flats, nice, sloping belly, very subtle drop point to it. So good for piercing, good for slicing. It's a really good all-around blade shape for sure. It's not particularly tall, even though it's a very near full flat grind. The actual height of the just knife itself isn't that much. Not to say this is a bad grind. This is a great grind, but just to give you an idea that, you got like a giant tall blade or something like that, the grind might actually be higher. So it's not just the fullness of it, it's the actual inches of it to give you more quote unquote time to get to a nice behind the edge thickness. So cutting with this knife is actually pretty decent. I did some food prep, got through some cardboard, and it's a champ. Does both equally well, I would say. It's a really all-round, just solid knife in terms of that. The blade steel on this is M390. So, for the price on this knife, I was kind of surprised to see that it was M390. But M390, it's kind of like stonewash finish on it, so hides a lot of wear on it, which I like. The little booze dog is on there, which is very tasteful. I like that. I mean, it's fairly large, but most people are pretty fond of dogs, so it's not like offensive to anything, to anyone. So just the M390 and the dog, and that's it. Otherwise, the sucker is clean as a whistle. So the knife was manufactured by WE, and so there's a lot of similarities to just an average WE knife, and you can kind of tell that they made this just the fit and finish and stuff like that. So I've not very often am I disappointed with a WE made knife, and considering this is such a good design coming out of Boots Blades, I think it's a really good collaboration. The clip is also pretty nice. It's not like super duper deep carry, but it's pretty good. They're not taking precedence over the lanyard hole. You've got a little loop up here, but that's much further down the knife. And the knife tapers. It's pretty discreet for the most part, and very easy to get in on the clip. They have the kind of 3-line motif. This isn't just a motif on the Booze Blade. We does that a lot, but you got the little Triforce thing here, 3 holes here, 3 little chinks here, 3 little chinks here, 3 lines here. It's not particularly sharp or anything, but you might get some gunk up in there. Like, it's not the biggest of deals. It's fine. It adds some texture to the knife and keeps it from being like too boring. So take it or leave it. It's just kind of a design aesthetic. I overall am pretty positive on it, but it is pretty subjective. Ergos on the knife are very decent. It's not particularly thick or contoured, but it's also just so neutral, and it's kind of like straight edge. It does feel very much like a fancy butter knife in the hand almost. But that's good. The jimping lands in the right spot. The jimping is very good. And it fits nice. You really only have one grip. I mean, you could do, the reverse grip type stuff. But normal grips, this is pretty much the one way. You've got the little guard there, which kind of incorporates with the little notch that is designed into the knife. So it's really well designed, this little thing right here, to just kind of both closed and opened. It looks like it was designed to meet the aesthetic eye as well as the practical purpose. Fit and finish on this knife is very good. I alluded to that earlier, but just specifically dead center, fit together very nice, no seams, no rough edges. It's extremely well finished. The grind lines are very good, very even on both sides. This is really, really good work. One minor nitpick, I'm not even putting it in the official nitpicks, is it's a little bit sharp on the opening aperture. That could have been knocked down just a hair, smidge more, but it's not too much of a problem. It's not like I'm cutting myself. And it does grab, so I don't know how much it would hurt the action if we took that away. But overall, the fit and finish is top notch. And next, we're going to talk about the OCD. So this is the open, the close, and the disengage of the knife. And overall, I'm going to put it in the just decent section, and I'll kind of explain why. So this is a front flipper, top flipper, depending on who you ask, but front flipper. It's perfectly serviceable as a front flipper. So it's pretty difficult to like misfire. However, I don't know. This is a case of like people saying it's the best front flipper of all time. I think my expectations were a little too high, unfortunately. It's very competent as a front flipper, but being kind of spoiled with other front flippers, it doesn't have the fidget factor really there. Like it opens, but it's just kind of a stealth open. There's no solid thwack to it. The detent's a little bit light in terms of the top or the front flipping part. It doesn't have that pent up kind of force that you really want to unleash when you pop that. Now, you do have the second way, which is the opening aperture, and this is my preferred way to open knives anyways, but in this case, it's like a drastic difference, improvement. Here, I can get some real authority out of it, and it does like have a little bit better, a little thwack to it. It's still kind of neutral. The sound of it or the authority of it isn't that high on my priority of things I need out of a good action, and so don't take my nitpick on this particular thing too much to heart, because I think most people aren't going to care as much as I do. But you have something like the stinger that I just not the stinger, the sting from Poland, the Herman. That thwack and just detent is so good that it's just instant connection to the knife that I bonded with, and this is kind of preventing me from bonding to it, even though it's probably better than most knives, both opening aperture and flipping. It's just I'm kind of spoiled, I guess, is what I'm trying to get at. The Disengage is pretty solid. It's got a little bit of a swoop down here on the presentation side, so it's giving you a lot of access to come in horizontally. You have a steel lock bar insert, and it's plenty of space right at the top, so you get lots of leverage. This was not an issue, even though you don't have a flipper tab to kind of protect the blade. They've designed this like little miniature finger guard that's in there, and that's perfect to kind of stop the blade so that you don't have to risk chopping it down into your fingers. So really like that aspect of the knife is probably excellent. As far as the close goes, it's again better than average compared to just random knives, but kind of below average comparing it to Wii's. I was expecting something a little bit better. I mean, it's definitely just one solid jostle and it closes, but it's not quite as free-folly or snappy on the drop as like the Pleroma or the Deacon or the Bishop even. Just lots of Wii knives that I've used. Pretty much all the Civivis close at least as good, if not way better. The Statera Action blows this out of the water, and that's a $70, $75 knife. So I think, if I had no expectations going in, this would still be in the decent section, not the excellent section, but I probably wouldn't be so down on it as I'm sounding probably to you right now if I didn't have really high expectations. With that out of the way, let's get into the excellent. I have two excellent things. The first one is kind of a twofer. I like how slim and lightweight this knife is. Just in the pocket, there's nothing really catching on you. There's no pocket peckers really. And it's just so thin in the pocket. I mean, you compare it to like a PM2, and it's like half the width. It's like clunk, clunk. So it just disappears in the pocket. But then cutting edge on this knife is actually a little bit longer. So it's just a very efficient knife in terms of blade length to size in your pocket. It goes very deep into the end of the knife, so blade to body ratio is top notch. And then the carbon fiber, I think, does make a difference. I mean, you're talking half of an ounce, or give or take. And so that extra, shedding of weight, it disappeared in my pocket carrying it. It really is good. Not to say that the titanium one isn't also very good to carry. I mean, being less than 3 ounces again, this would still probably be in the decent in terms of, weight and carry. But this one just beats it out. So if you can get your hands on one of the carbon fiber ones, that's kind of what you're going to, aside from aesthetics, that's what you're going to take away from it. The last excellent thing is the price. Now, it's going to come with an asterisk, which we'll talk about in the nitpicks, but this is like $230, $220, depending on, where you get it retail. Now, it's going to be really hard to find it, but when you do, that price, I mean, $200 for, exotic materials, you have titanium, carbon fiber, and 390. I mean, unless you're getting into like mammoth molars or Van X or, some exotic thing, this is really high end. It's well made, it's well finished, premium parts, and a really competitive price. So, if this knife costs $300, I think people would still like the knife a lot, and it would probably sell out. But I think it would also sell out just enough to where they can keep making more and just keep up with demand. This is so cheap that it's really hard to find one. I mean, it's a very competitive market. Nitpicks, I kind of mentioned it earlier, but just the lackluster flipper tab. I think either make it straight, and I think I would get a little bit more thrust behind that front flipper, where this being angled back, you don't have as much of that power that you would on a flipper that's up here, where I get to really crank it. It's totally serviceable, and you can kind of learn to use the knife this way, but I don't know. I'm not too excited about it, even though I know that's not going to be a popular opinion. The hard to findness of this is really an issue. Even just getting a normal smoke is pretty hard to do. I mean, if you go to boozblades.com, he's pretty much sold out all the time. To get the exclusive, I think it's even harder to get. So it's just one of those things where you have to be patient, bide your time. There's a lot of really good knives that are kind of in that place. You have the Three Rivers Manufacturing Atom and Neutron that are, making just really fantastic knives that are very competitively priced, and they're just always sold out. For the terrible section, I don't have anything terrible to say about the knife. So let's get right into the conclusion. The conclusion on this knife is, if you find one of these suckers, you should get it. If you're ultra picky about action, then I just want you not necessarily to not get it, but just reset your expectations. I think the knife is still worth getting if you can, even if you are kind of a action diva like I am. It's still probably going to just check so many of your boxes in terms of, cutting power, appearance, weight, size, just kind of a full package. Just a really excellent knife. It's I don't know. It's like the Honda Civic SI of the knife world. It's just it's really efficient, flashy, practical, well priced. Like it's the perfect crossroads of just everything you want out of a knife. So I'm pretty high on the knife. I hope this helps you make your decision if you weren't already convinced to pick one of these up before. Hopefully you are now. That's all I have for you. Bye.